And we are live. Yay. I know it's early. What can I say? I still have a messed up sleep-wake schedule. And I've been up since 3 a.m. And it is now 6:30 a.m. My back pain is subsiding somewhat. I'm just going to kind of fiddle around while waiting for listeners to file in. I'll probably make this a short video and then come back around 8 a.m. Pacific time. We shall see. For this month and next month, any donations I get on PayPal or GoFundMe will go to keeping the utilities on, the gas, electricity, and water. It's been a rough year for all of us, almost 2 years of a rough time. I want to rant a little bit. When I went to the emergency room, that doctor prescribed some pain pills called tramadol. I had to quit taking tramadol because it made me vomit. But he also prescribed a muscle relaxant. So I could just take my usual Aleve, well, the generic naproxen, along with the muscle relaxant, and it worked. And when I saw the GP, a few days later, I asked for a refill on the muscle relaxants. And then it was a few days after that Rite had my prescriptions. I went to pick them up, and that bozo prescribed extra strength Tylenol. First, I did not ask for painkillers. Second, I never use Tylenol. I like my liver and I want to keep it. Third, he did not refill the muscle relaxants, which actually help with muscle spasms in your back. I probably have a slipped disc or maybe a herniated disc. Whatever it is, it's getting better as long as I don't try to lift anything that weighs more than a can of cat food. But when I go back to see the doctor again this week, now that they're going to take a CAT scan of my spine, I'm going to chew him out. I'm going to rip him a new one. Where does he get off prescribing Tylenol, which I can buy without a prescription anyway, and which I never use? I had already bought Aleve, well, the generic Aleve, which does not require a prescription. I asked for muscle relaxants, so I've had to severely ration the muscle relaxants, taking one at bedtime so I'm not kept awake by muscle spasms in my back when I was supposed to take them up to 4 times a day as needed. I'm seriously upset with that stupid doctor. Who prescribes Tylenol? He did, however, refill my prescription for an inhaler, but that was not urgent. Oh well. On top of that, my co-payment for the Tylenol was a little over $6. If I'd realized what he had done, prescribing Tylenol, I could have saved $6 by refusing it. Tylenol. That stuff is poison. And extra strength makes it that much more poisonous. No, thank you. Anyway, I see that at least 2 people have wandered in, stumbled in, or triumphantly marched in. I'm going to go ahead then and talk a little about weird things in my life. My Life on the Edge of Reality, the title of one of my books. Well, when I was very young, well, hello there, Tim. Yeah, Tylenol and an alcoholic beverage put together is even worse than Tylenol by itself. I use ibuprofen or aspirin or Aleve. And since I have to take pain pills 2 or 3 times a day, I'm using Aleve because it won't upset my stomach and it won't cause this ringing in my ears that you get from too much aspirin or ibuprofen. Now, ibuprofen doesn't upset your tummy as much as aspirin, but it's basically aspirin with a teeny tiny change in the one little corner of the molecule. So I'm using Aleve, which I bought without a prescription, and I'm going to chew out that stupid doctor. If he didn't want to refill my prescription for muscle relaxants, he should have discussed it with me instead of just writing a script for Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol. God, ew. What a bozo. I'm sure they're scared to death that I'm an opioid addict, when in fact I cannot take opioids. The tramadol was my last hope for a pain pill that would not make me vomit. Didn't work. On day 2 of taking that stuff, I was vomiting, so I quit taking it and got my Aleve. Idiots. I think I might try having a nice alcoholic cocktail right before bed, since I'm not taking anything that will interact with it. I guess I'll take aspirin instead of Aleve just in case tonight, and or the ibuprofen, and then I'll have uh, a boosted fuzzy navel. I like a little peach schnapps in my orange juice, and I can beef it up with a shot of vodka. I might try that tonight, but my back isn't as bad. It's improving, but I'm not doing anything. I hate not doing things. Well, anyway, let's go back to when I was a very small child. I had an angel always behind my right shoulder talking to me. And when I was he's about 9 years old, he told me he wouldn't be doing that anymore because, people would think I was crazy, insane, hallucinating. And he quit doing that. But he also said he would be around to protect me. I can't say whether that was real or whether I was an insane little girl. But I needed protection because we were living in a haunted house. Severely infested house. These were not ghosts of dead people, these were demons. And it was around that time that Mom went nuts, or more nuts than before. I didn't realize, maybe my brothers did, but I did not realize that she was an alcoholic. She used to sip cheap wine like Thunderbird, a fortified wine. Has more alcohol added to it. Um, but she got really way into the Foursquare Gospel Church because the world was coming to an end. Well, the world did not come to an end, so she became an atheist. Go figure. Meanwhile, now I was trying to mentally, through telepathy, to contact space aliens in spaceships. Yeah, I guess I was a little nuts. But where did I get the idea that that could even be done? Well, I think it's because I'd been studied along with many other students at my elementary school. Hi, Howard, in the chat. But one night in particular, I remember lying in bed awake because Mom always put us to bed way too early. I mean, I was not put to bed, told to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and I didn't have to get up till 8 in the morning, and I certainly did not need to sleep for 12 hours. Ridiculous. Anyway, one night I did contact, or thought I contacted, some space aliens on a spaceship. They said their engines were not working and asked if I was a mechanic. And I said yes. I was like 9 or 10 years old. But I didn't speak, I said it with my mind. And I asked them to show me their engine. And they did. And it looked to me as if the drive shaft had become disconnected from the flywheel. Well, apparently I was wrong, because when I suggested that they pair them up, they broke the connection, and I was filled with a deep sense of, what would I call it? They were let down. They felt hopeless because I didn't have an answer for them. I don't know, maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I was hallucinating. I don't know. But I do know that I had many, many nightmares during those years in the infested house. In one of them, I guess disembodied voice showed me a film. We didn't have video. Well, I guess video existed then, but nobody had it at home. It was for television shows. They showed me a film clip of a red-eyed green creature with long red claws and long white fangs, sitting on the roof of our house, pulling strings as if we were puppets. And they said this was the disembodied voice said this was the cause of many of our troubles, that this little demon was making us unhappy and if not forcing, at least persuading us to do bad things. You never know. But Mom got weirder and weirder. And she actually wanted to kill Dad, but she did not want to get caught. So she thought putting a lot of salt in his food would make his blood pressure rise and cause a stroke. It didn't. I mean, it didn't work. It didn't raise his blood pressure. It didn't cause a stroke. Also, it was while we lived at that house that Dad went back to college and got a degree and became an accountant, because he had broken his back on a toboggan ride and he could not do the physical work with sheet metal anymore. Well, so we went from being average middle class to poverty. Our grandparents owned the house we were living in, and that's a good thing because we couldn't afford to pay rent. But you know what? Mom never ran out of alcohol or cigarettes or coffee. Jeez. Well, anyway, the Watts riot happened in 1965 in August. Hi, Buckeye. Let's see, Vuckeye. Uh, um, so there's the Watts riot of August 1965, and in September, we moved to Anaheim. And Mom put me into a Baptist school owned by the Baptist Church. I guess she wasn't quite a solid atheist yet. But the world was not coming to an end. So rather than reject the Foursquare Gospel Church of Amy Semple McPherson, who predicted the end of the world, she rejected religion entirely. But put me in a Baptist run school for 1 year. They were the kind of Baptists who didn't believe in dancing or makeup. Uh, well, let's see. If you were 18 years old, you could wear lipstick, but not red lipstick. It had to be pink because harlots use red lipstick. They're very, very regressive, more than conservative, and very strict. And I really was an outcast there because I had not been baptized. I didn't get baptized till my husband persuaded me because he was worried about my soul. Anyway, even so, when I had the opportunity to transfer to the local public school, Mom actually gave me the choice. I declined. I, I didn't want to switch in the middle of a school year. That was sixth grade. Seventh grade, I got to go to public school. And I never was with the in crowd, but I had one friend. I didn't really plan things that way, but all through my school years, I usually had one friend and only one. But we were good friends, and yet we've all lost touch. And things seemed to settle down. There was very little weirdness after we moved to Anaheim. But there was always some weirdness. There was never enough food, but Mom would take my baby sister out to eat at a restaurant or a fast food place and tell me to clean the house while she was gone. Every Saturday, sometimes, well, on Sundays, I went to Sunday school with my friend from the Baptist school, Diana. But on Saturdays, I was expected to do all kinds of chores. And I was both cooking and cleaning during the week, every day after school. Mom went into a deep depression and rarely got out of bed. One time she sent me to the grocery store to do the shopping, and I bought what I had observed her buying when she went shopping. And when I came back, I had a little over $1 in left over, and I handed it to her and said, "Here's your change." And she was sitting up, but in bed, in her nightgown. But I handed her the change, and she ripped me a new one. "You couldn't possibly have bought enough food if you have money left over." I'm like, it didn't occur to me to just shove the money in my pocket and keep it. It wasn't mine. It was the family's grocery money. Let's see. Buckeye says the dangers of any external legalism always start with rules or regulations against particular types of dress, adorning oneself in excess accessories. I'm a conservative, but it's just ridiculous. Well, I rarely use makeup, but not because of the Baptist church. It's because Granny told me if you paint your face when you're young, you'll have to paint your face when you're old. And I don't think I'm that old. I'm 67. But I do wear makeup at weddings and funerals. And I still have the legs for a mini skirt, but I'd feel ridiculous wearing one now. Oh well. Anyway, there wasn't a whole lot of weirdness in those years, but life with my family was getting impossible. Oh, poor Buckeye can't even fix your face. Mom used to say before going out, "I have to put on my face." She meant makeup. Anyway, I was obsessed with horses, I think because I had so little freedom of movement. Being on the back of a galloping horse was a great release. So once in a while, I'd have the opportunity to go with a group from my school and rent a horse for an hour for a whole $1. Those were the days. I think it's something like 50 now. Anyway, the weirdness started back in that little house in Anaheim. Oh, but before we moved from Culver City, when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11, Mom had put one of my brothers into my bedroom because my older brothers did not get along and it was getting serious. Well, in the middle of the night, I woke up because my brother got out of bed and went into the bathroom, but he never came back. So I started the Mom, Mom, Mom. And finally, Mom came into the room and I told her, Steve went into the bathroom and he never came back. Well, Steve was lying in bed asleep, but Mom actually shook him awake and asked him if he had gone to the bathroom, and he said, no, but I really needed to and I couldn't wake up. So I guess I saved him from a very embarrassing bedwetting episode. But that was weird. And then a couple years later in the house in Anaheim, once in a while, I would see my brother walking down the hall when he wasn't there. He was sitting in the living room watching television, or he was in his bed asleep. It really spooked me. I didn't like it. Then, as Dad's career got a little better, and Mom sort of unofficially adopted her first husband's children by another mother. So I guess we were like stepbrother and stepsister, something like that. No blood relation anyway. She kind of took in Susie and Vaughn and some of Susie's friends. So we needed a bigger house, and Mom and Dad bought this house in Brea. We didn't know how we could afford the mortgage. It was over $300 a month for a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with an attached garage, and it was brand new. But we moved there. And life with my family got so bad that about a week before Christmas, when I was 17, I walked out the door at about 9 o'clock at night, and I didn't come back for several months. And the only reason I did come back was because I was seriously ill and couldn't work. I had a job and a boyfriend and so forth, and then I got a really bad kidney infection. Well, meanwhile, while I was working and on my own, I rented a room from a nice couple. There was one incident while I was sleeping. I was having a pretty decent dream. Nothing scary or in particular, but then it was morning and I was beginning to wake up, but suddenly my jaw began clenching and unclenching, kind of shaking, and I heard this roar of an ocean in my ears. And I thought it was probably an epileptic seizure. So after I recovered from the kidney infection, Mom actually took me to a specialist, a neurologist. They took an EEG and said, well, it's normal, but you have excessive eye blink. And I didn't know then, but today I do know that that's called Parasomnia. You start to dream when you're not asleep. And much like Philip K. Dick's visions, it was a sort of hypnagogic thing. It would happen as I was falling asleep or as I was waking up. I would have dreams. It still happens to me from time to time, but I don't always have the shaking and inability to stop the tremors. In fact, I think I might actually be rid of them for good now. But back then, that was the first experience I remember when I was 17, getting close to 18. Good morning, Jason. Gotta have my candy corn. Okay. Um, well, from time to time, when I was younger, and it was usually in the morning as I was waking up, I would find myself unable to move. Trembling, shaking, but unable to move. And one time in particular, Mom was staying in my apartment, so I was sleeping on the floor in my son's room, and I was hit with wave after wave, the roaring ocean sound in my ears and my body shaking, trembling, over and over. And I thought, if I can just speak, say something, it'll end it. I'll be completely awake and it'll stop. But it wasn't stopping, but my son woke up and realized that I was in distress, and he asked me what was wrong, and I managed to get out, "Get your grandma." Now, I would say that was a brilliant move, but it was just um, panic. Well, he went and got her, and as soon as she woke up, while my son was still in her room, waking her up, it all stopped. It went away. And that's when I realized that there was some connection between this frightening experience and my mother. I truly believe that she was demon possessed. And after hearing Art Bell's interviews with the exorcist, Father Malachi Martin, I learned that your demons will come to believe that they have a rightful claim to your children. Well, who knows? Let's see, how long have I been on? Almost 40 minutes. Sorry for starting so early, but my sleep wake schedule is so messed up. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I had slept about 8 hours. I was already kind of off kilter before I hurt my back. Oh, Jason, I'm so sorry. Homeless shelters and a demon possessed mother. Wow. I don't feel comforted in the reality that I am not alone, that other people suffer these things. Makes me sad. Yeah, Jason, at least my mother let me stay with her for a few months. I couldn't stand it any longer. I was going nuts because Mom was nuts. Besides, it was Napa up in Northern California in the middle of a drought in the summer with this huge heat wave. And on top of that, people were still afraid of the Zodiac killer. That would have been 75 or 6, I guess 76. And Mom was always at the bar getting drunk and sleeping around. And yet she had the nerve to be furious when her steady boyfriend cheated on her. Go figure. This is such a terrible time for all of us, unless you happen to be wealthy, elite, and entitled. Let's see. Oh, well, Mom died rather mysteriously in, let's see, 89. I always have to figure it out. April of 89. But these seizures or waking dreams or demonic attacks didn't stop completely for me. Although they became more and more rare. I don't remember what year it was when I had the last one. But it was in the early 2000s. I could probably reconstruct the exact date, but I don't want to. I don't want to count the years, months, weeks, and days. I have more weirdness around me than I care to recall. Some of them are best forgotten. And of course, one of the weirdest things was meeting Philip K. Dick and ending up marrying him and bearing his child. And I think a great deal of what Phil experienced was this parasomnia, waking dreams. He talked about hypnagogic and hypnopompic experiences, that these visions tended to happen while he was lying in bed, but not quite awake or not quite asleep. And we did meditate together one time. He did a lot of meditating, trying to bring on these visions. He really was obsessed with it. Hence the exegesis, thousands of pages of notes and letters to friends and colleagues about these experiences, what they really were, what they really meant. Well, he exaggerated, embellished, made stuff up sometimes. He would be discussing the possible plot for one of his Valis novels, and the people listening would just assume that he was talking about what really happened, and Phil let them believe that. It was a game. He had fun with it. And even today, many people believe that the events in his novel Valis was what actually happened. No, it's fiction, based on a real experience, but it's fiction. His novel Radio Free Albemuth is much closer to reality, and it's one of the most accessible of his novels. Definitely the most accessible Valis novel. Let's see, The Man Who Japed, selling for $500, first edition, printing, paper bag at your local bookstore in Scottsdale. $500, huh? I don't think I have any first editions. Oh, paperback. Not paper bag, paperback. Wow. Well, I've sold nearly everything that's really valuable that Phil signed. And they've gone up in value since I sold them, but you know, the people who bought them from me were speculating. Some were just keeping these treasures, and others were reselling them. And okay, it's not my place to complain. I mean, I could have held on to them for 10 or 20 years, but I needed money now. I do have a few things of Phil's, and I really need to get into my boxes of stuff to find a few things that I know I have, but I don't know where they are, which is another reason why I get so angry that someone decided to be helpful while I was out with a broken hip by unpacking every one of my boxes, putting books into the bookshelf that I was getting rid of. Yes, there are some books I don't keep. Putting knickknacks out on display, knickknacks that I was going to donate to the thrift shop or the Lions Club. And then packing up the things that I use every day and stacking up boxes behind my bed of all the things I actually use. Well, at a time when I was not supposed to be lifting anything, and I had to do it anyway. So I go and take a few things out of a box and lay them out on the bed so that I could lift the box without killing my broken hip. And I'm still, there must be boxes that someone shoved out into the shed. I still haven't found, for example, my hairbrush, my nail clippers, my lip balm, and several of my prescription medications, which will be out of date by now. And I've already had them replaced, had the doctor replace them because I couldn't find them. Yes, I'm still angry, upset, and ornery about that. Among the other things I haven't been able to find, let's see, Ovaltine, Hershey's syrup, maple syrup, um, oatmeal. I did finally find the gigantic jug of powdered Nestle Quick. I had to buy Ovaltine because I couldn't find what I had. I haven't found my my canister of protein powder for my shakes, trying to at least maintain my weight. I need to gain weight. I'm seriously underweight. I don't know. Being helpful might have meant moving the boxes to a different location so I'd have a clear path to the bathroom and bedroom. It didn't require unpacking everything. And the books that I used that were on the bookshelves were moved. I had the ones on the bookshelves organized by categories and authors, and they were pulled out in order to put other books on that shelf, and then the books they pulled out were put on some other bookshelf at random. It's disgusting. Don't mess with my books. And she even had the nerve to label my boxes. So my big shoe box, the kind you get boots in, she dumped out the stationery I kept in it and filled it with rocks and labeled it rocks. You don't put a bunch of dirty old rocks. They were collectible. They're rocks that she mixed up the rocks I use for rock painting. It's a thing. You paint a rock and hide it like at the local park or something like that for people to find. She mixed those up with collectible rocks that I'm not painting and that I plan to either keep or sell to a local rock shop. This cost me money. I had to take down all my eBay listings because I couldn't find the things I was selling. Horrible. If you really wanted to help, for example, I use an electric roaster oven because the oven on my stove doesn't work. She unplugged it, moved it to a different spot, and stacked up a bunch of boxes in front of it and on top of it. Took me forever to rescue it and put it back where it belongs. And she had the nerve to complain that it burned her hand because it was on. Well, don't touch other people's stuff and that won't happen. It wasn't going to start any fires. I have it in a safe place where, and really, if she'd paid attention, she could have noticed it was plugged into a power strip, and you just turn off the button on the power strip and let it cool and leave it alone. Leave it where it is. So I had to do all kinds of stuff I shouldn't have been doing while my hip was healing. It's still healing. It's been a little over a year. So I'm ornery every day. Whenever I look through the boxes and go, oh, there's that thing that I couldn't find. What's it doing in this box? I even had boxes of things to throw out in the trash, unpacked, and the stuff scattered here, there, and everywhere. When I'm sorting things, I have a couple empty boxes and I bring out one full box and sort through it. Keep trash, keep trash, keep trash. And if I get a certain number of things that belong in one particular box, like fancy stationery, I pull out that box and put those things in it. And even as gimpy as I have been, I've eliminated a dozen boxes since I came home with my broken hip. About a year ago. And I still haven't found many of the things that I need to find, like my special tweezers. I can't afford to replace them. They're a scientific instrument. The ends are tapered very thin, like sewing needles. Probably cost $50 or $60 to get the same tweezers again. I had them in my desk drawer. She dumped out my desk drawer. God knows what she did with the stuff that was in it. But then she unpacked a bunch of crap and put that in my desk drawer. The nerve. I just hope she didn't throw those tweezers in the trash. Oh, and my plumber's putty. It's a, or not putty, it's a, for sealing pipes when you screw them together. It's like a tape. Found that in my first aid kit. She must have thought it was adhesive tape for bandages. It wasn't. It was with my plumbing supplies. Oh, and my plumbing supplies, I had the things I was ready to use because I had a couple little projects to do. I had them in a little box all together, everything I needed to start the project. She dumped those out into boxes of tools and hardware. I found my guitar strings in a box of hardware. No, not the strings, that was the pegs. The guitar strings were in between books on a bookshelf. I am so ticked off even now because I haven't had time and energy to string my guitar, even though I've found the parts to it, except for the glue, which disappeared into some black hole. See, it's a $10 yard sale guitar, so I Mickey Mouse the stringing to make sure it holds, and that requires some glue. Glue is gone. I'll have to buy a new one. Every day I come across something that just makes me furious. And I would let go. I know I should let go, but I'm reminded every day. I mean, like, I had two books by the same author together on a bookshelf. Both of them were pulled out of that bookshelf and put elsewhere, but the two books were not in the same place. It took a year for me to find both of them and put them together again. Ridiculous. And it is mostly my books that I'm finding because I'm going through the bookshelves looking for them. All my books by Immanuel Velikovsky were together. Not no more. They're all over the place. Here and there I find one and put it together with another one by Velikovsky. All my books by, why do I blank on the name? Well, let's just say, what's his name? They were all together on a bookshelf. Not no more. Let me see if I can come up with the guy's name. I should remember. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah. Graham Hancock. I have half a dozen of his books scattered all over the place. Here and there I find one. And books that I boxed up because they were special. Some were signed by the author, but not worth very much, but they might be in the future. Two of them were in my drawer, my chest of drawers, the one in the living room that's for stuff that I use when I'm writing. She pulled them out. She actually went through my drawers and pulled out those two signed paperbacks and put them in. Well, I found one of them. I don't know where she put the other one. It's ridiculous. How dare you go through my drawers? Oh, and then I had things in envelopes and folders stacked up on top of my bookcase because they were things I needed to read and things I was selling on eBay. I freaked out at first because one of them was a big manila envelope that Phil had addressed by hand and sent to me. I finally found that. I was afraid she'd decided to throw it out. You don't go through other people's stuff, and you don't throw other people's things in the trash. If you think it's trash, you put it in a box of things you think are trash and let the owner decide what to do with them. Do you realize that it's a crime what she did? It isn't just invasive, intrusive, and mean, it's a crime. It's burglary and it's theft and vandalism. I do know that I can't put my tools in my tool shed because she put all my stereo equipment in the shed. Those things belong in the house. So I can set up, finally, after all these years, set up my stereo system and enjoy music on good speakers with a good amplifier. Nope. She shoved all that out into the shed, so there's no room for my tools in my tool shed. And I really don't care to have shovels and rakes in my house. Hi, Jan. Oh, Lord. I went through much of the woo-woo stuff already. Now I'm just ranting about helpful people who think it's a good idea to rearrange everything you own so that you can't find anything. And that's helpful. Ah. Ay, ay, ay. She even shoved my Bible into a bookshelf. The Bible that I keep on my desk. Couldn't find it. And she didn't remember where she put it. She didn't remember where she put anything. She had no business moving my Bible. I have several oversized books, mostly reference books, that I don't shove into a bookshelf. I put them on top of a bookshelf or I put them on my desk, like my Bible. Which happened, thank God. She did it again when I asked her to help me move the bookcase to where it belonged, because she had put it where the pantry belongs. My pantry is a cabinet that belongs off in the corner. She put the bookcase there and the pantry was there to begin with. She just shoved it over a few inches so she could put so she could bring a bookshelf from her house so she could unpack all the boxes of books that I had packed up. Well, anyway, so I made her help me put the pantry over there and the bookcase over there. And it was simply a matter of taking out the books, moving the bookcase, and putting the books back. But while she was at it, she took my Bible and my cookbook off my desk and shoved them into the bookshelf. And that cookbook took me a while to find it. It's The Joy of Cooking, and Phil bought it for me and signed it. To Tuffy from Furry, our pet names for each other. But inside the Bible, I had put this little paper, which was a memo from his literary agent, Henry Ludner. And on the back, Phil wrote by hand in pencil. I can't give you a very clear picture of it. Maybe if I shut off the lamp, it's a little better. Anyway, I have a buyer for this at 350 euros. 350 euros, which is probably $400. And I was scared to death. What if it fell out of my Bible when she moved it from my desk to the bookshelf? And what if some idiot threw it in the trash? It's sort of a circle of life thing that Phil wrote for me in 1972. To reassure me that he was totally committed to me and not to any previous wife or girlfriend. And he underlined the word forget. He double underlined it. He would forget the past and be with me and not living in the past. Now, if the buyer comes through and I get 350 euros in my PayPal account, I'll be able to pay my bills and keep the heat and lights on for the winter. I don't really want to sell these things, Jan, but the older I get, the more I realize that I'm going to die with all this stuff. And at a certain point, it becomes, it's just stuff. Now, my books are a different thing because I actually read them. I need to be able to just put my hand on the book I want. And it should be where I put it, not where someone moved it. I'm upset about food that's missing from my house because I had to buy stuff that I know I already had. It isn't as big a deal now because the state of California decided to give me food stamps. But even so, it's wasteful. And if I find those things shoved out into my shed, I can make room in my shed for things that actually belong there. It's just so frustrating. It's like a Philip K. Dick story, like the Adjustment Bureau. They come in and move everything and change everything while you aren't watching. Except this time it has a very human cause. Well, so I can probably sell the joy of cooking. It's falling apart, but where it isn't because it's a book, a cookbook, it's because Phil signed it. Where'd that go? Here we go. To Tuffy from Furry. And he wrote a little note. About how he is going to appreciate the good food that I'll cook for him with this book. I think I might let go of other things first, like that note that I keep in the Bible. Yeah, The Adjustment Team was the title of the story. The movie was pretty good until that sappy sweet ending. It's kind of like, oh, you broke all the rules? Okay, we'll change the rules just for you. Right, you betcha. You bet. What day is it? Date 16th. Oh, tomorrow is the date when Phil always went nuts. November 17th. Because it was November 17th, 1971, when somebody tore his house apart searching for who knows what. Oh, Jan's in the future. It's the 17th. Okay. Well, let me take a quick break to recycle some coffee and we'll talk about November 17th. I'll be back. Oh, let's see. It's getting chilly. Oh, dum-de-dum. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. I forgot to dum-de-dum. Lord. One potato chip. Okay, two, because nobody can eat just one. Refill the water. Come on. Oh boy. Um, hmm. Hmm. December 17th, 1971. I think that's going to require another cigarette. I don't smoke this much when I'm not live on YouTube. Oh, before I proceed, the little control thing for my heating pad shorted out. You know, pop, flash, or flash, pop, and then the smell of electrical fire. So it's just a pad now. I'm going to have to get a heating pad. Fortunately, I have been receiving like Amazon gift codes, about $3 at a time. So I can use those. I'm up to about $20 worth of Amazon gift cards. I think that should about cover a new heating pad. Meanwhile, I don't have to fight Torah for the pad because it doesn't get warm. And on the plus side, I can use the cord for my lamp. My lamp needs a new cord. Shiver, shiver. Oh well. Anyway, November 17th, 1971. It happened sort of like the description in A Scanner Darkly. Sort of. Well, Jason, I don't trust voice to text. Oh well. I will be on with Cardinal Sin sometime soon. You can check out his YouTube channel. I don't know what we'll talk about. November 17th, 1971. I hadn't met Phil yet. I met him in July of 72. Okay, Phil had kind of gone a little nuts when Nancy left him. And hi, Witta. Okay, I gotta type there. Anyway, Nancy's brother, Michael, stayed on in Phil's house. And he was younger than Nancy. And a lot of his friends hung around. But what the authorities saw was, here's this man, 40-year-old man. Let's see, 40? Let's see. Okay, 31, mid 71. I'm trying to do math in my head. 30 to 71 is 41, 42, 43 years old. Oh, but he was born in December, so he was 42. Okay. So this guy who's about 40 years old, and there's all these teenagers in their young 20s hanging around at his house. Years later, I experienced something similar. I actually got a phone call from the juvenile whatever detective, I guess, at our police department. And he, one of the things he wanted to know was why so many teenagers hung around my house. I said, well, my son is 15 years old. Do you want him to hang out with 30-year-olds? Oh, sorry, Howard. My connection seems solid here. Anyway, they see this 42-year-old man with teenagers and kids in their early 20s hanging out at his house, not realizing that Nancy's brother Michael was having his friends over. And this was during Nixon's war on drugs. And on top of that, Phil never went to work, so how was he paying the rent? Or making the house payment, I should say. So they just assumed he must be selling drugs. No, he was an author who worked at home. But that didn't, and he wasn't doing very well. He was struggling to pay the bills. But that didn't matter. He had no visible means of support, and all these young people hung around his house. And he had already signed the petition in Ramparts magazine refusing to pay income taxes until the war in Vietnam was ended. Well, the IRS took his car to cover his income taxes. And they did that to a number of people who had signed the Ramparts petition. Anyway, one of the older people called himself Hal Kinchin, and that was almost certainly not a member of oh, hello, two. It's two flaggergeek blab. Two flag gargle blab. Two flag gargle blab. I'll just call you 2. Well, Hal said he wanted to recruit Phil to work for them. They'll just kill you. Oh, Hal said, and replace you with a look-alike. And we've already written a few of your future books. Oh, anyway. Wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't you know it? I get on this topic and sure enough, my internet connection is unstable. Phil didn't take him seriously at first, but the television set and show Phil the camera. Okay. He showed Phil okay. I think I'm good now. There was a inside the television that was watching everything that happened within view of the television set in the living room. And then on the day of the hit on Phil's house, November 17th, 1971, Hal lured Phil and his girlfriend Stephanie out of the house, asking Phil to meet him at a local coffee shop. Well, Phil's car broke down on the freeway on the way to the coffee shop. And he had to wait for a tow truck and then take a taxi home. The cab driver refused to drive down the block to Phil's house. He let them out on the corner a block away, saying that he was afraid to go down that street. So Phil and Stephanie walked about a block to the house and found the front door wide open, the sliding glass door smashed, and everything a mess inside. And what they took were Phil's bank records, bank statements, his tax records, and his manuscripts. Somebody really had it in for him. Now, the local sheriffs thought Phil was a drug dealer. But somebody else thought he was something much more important. Who knows? Amazing. I think my connection is stable finally. He fled to Canada as soon as he was able. Had his house put up for sale and had the realtor get his personal possessions into storage. Yes, to flag. Sometimes the agents of this matrix show up in very strange guises. Well, It didn't work out too well in Canada. He was guest of honor at the Vancouver, British Columbia Science Fiction Convention. He gave a speech. And when the convention was over, he rented an apartment and planned to stay there and never come back to the United States. But apparently, whoever was after him did not stop at the border. One evening, Phil had a headache, so he was walking down the sidewalk to a local pharmacy to get some aspirin when two men in black suits dragged him off the sidewalk and shoved him into the back of a black limousine. We had never heard of Men in Black, and Phil thought they looked like FBI agents. Well, they questioned him and told him stuff while driving around the streets of Vancouver at night. And the next thing Phil knew, he woke up sitting on the floor of his apartment, and next to him were an empty pill bottle and a water glass, also empty. He had swallowed a whole bottle of sleeping pills. Potassium bromide, currently known as a date rape drug. He managed to call for help. He assumed he had to commit suicide, but he didn't remember doing that. Well, as an American with no money, no health insurance, and he would not be covered by Canada's medical plan, the only place he could go was this drug rehab place called Excalais. First American words meaning the path. And at first they had him doing heavy work when he recovered from the overdose of sleeping pills. But then they discovered he was a writer, so they had him work in their public relations. And he basically had to escape. He was one of the few people there who was allowed to leave the facility and go into town. So as soon as he got some royalty checks from his agent, he went into town and cashed them and got on a plane for Orange County, California, because he'd been in contact with Professor McNally at Cal State Fullerton. And McNally had promised to find Phil a place to stay and help him out as much as he could. And so that's how I came to meet Phil in Orange County, California in 1972. He was still paranoid, but justifiably so. And I was acting mysterious just because I thought it was fun. Wow. I was going to join the Navy or go to college, one or the other, and I was leaning toward the Navy. And then I met Phil. Soon as I was gone, Mom decided to leave Dad. Apparently, she didn't want to leave him before I was gone out of the house because she hated me so much she didn't want me with her. So the minute I was settled somewhere else, boom, I'm leaving. The woman was demon possessed. Gas $3.79 a gallon. Try California, Jason. The cheapest gas is about $5 a gallon, and you have to shop around to find it. I'm so glad I don't have a car. Oh, look at it, sweetie. Hi there, kitty cat. I'm not allowed to touch her, but I'm allowed to talk to her now. It wasn't always so. And my back is hurting, which means I didn't take my leave. My little blue pill. Yeah. Oh, well, it's nothing like it was at first. Oh, come on. I hate child-proof taps. They're so hard for me to use. I quit taking aspirin for a while because I was getting ringing in my ears, and that's a sign that you've had too much aspirin. So I went to Rite Aid and got some generic Aleve. Stupid doctor prescribed extra strength Tylenol. I am not going to take that crap. No, Tylenol is poison. Oh no, not the blue pills. Yeah, I should take the red pill, shouldn't I? Oh dear. What happens if you take them both? Well, the muscle relaxant is a red pill. Let's see if I have any left. I don't think I do. Oh, I have one left. It's kind of orange, almost red. Nuprin. That sounds vaguely familiar. Let me see if Google will give me a clue. Oh my God. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Yep. It's another one of those things. It's Nuprin is ibuprofen, apparently. Yep. And the most frequently advertised form of ibuprofen, or brand name rather, I think is Motrin. Well, ibuprofen is almost aspirin. I know this because I briefly dated one of the chemists who worked on the development of ibuprofen. It's a complex molecule, an almost aspirin molecule with one tiny change at one end of the molecule. So it's easier on your stomach, but it's still basically aspirin. Anyway, Aleve is naproxen sodium. says so on the bottle. Oh gosh. Well, when we moved basically across the street to a new apartment, things got weird. I was busy making a baby. He hatched out in July. Uh, we moved in April, and Phil was so paranoid about something happening to his baby that he wouldn't let me do any of the work of moving. Actually hired movers. And anyway, and I needed to stand on a chair to reach some of the cupboards in the kitchen. He just wasn't having it, so I had to wait till he was taking a nap so I could get to the higher shelves. It wasn't as if I could just say, Phil, please get this for me. He wasn't that helpful. Oh, once in a while, sometimes, but unreliable. He'd be listening to the stereo with his headphones on, or he'd be taking a nap. Anyway, so after our baby was born, things got weird. I'm no longer sure of the dates or the sequence, but we were being spied on. At one point, the apartment next door was vacant and filled with electronic equipment. I suspected at the time that the landlord was spying on his wife, to see if she was cheating on him. But, well, because there was a working telephone in that apartment and it somehow connected to the landlord's home phone. Being curious and finding the apartment unlocked, I went in and picked up the phone, and I heard two women having a conversation, and I assumed that was the landlord's wife and one of her friends. So I hung up carefully. Anyway, Phil had an abscessed molar, and he was a chicken about dentists, so he went to an oral surgeon when he couldn't stand the pain anymore, and he had the molar extracted under general anesthesia. That would be February of 1974. And when he came home, well, we went by taxi cab because I didn't drive. I didn't have a license yet, and Phil certainly could not drive home after having general anesthesia. So we took a cab. So rather than rack up more cab fare by going to the pharmacy, Phil asked the oral surgeon to phone the pharmacy and have them deliver his medication. And when the lady from the pharmacy came to the door, Phil had his first vision of a pink light, a pink beam. Oh, Two Flag was born in March of 74. Okay. Well, Phil always, or often anyway, called it his 3-2-74 experience because of the pink light wasn't the only thing. That infamous Xerox letter arrived on the second day of March. In Europe, though, they do the dates backward, or they say we do them backward. To them, 3-2 is February 3, but it was really March 2. Now, I wonder sometimes if something was not implanted in Phil's jaw when he had the oral surgery. In any case, he did begin to have hallucinations of people talking to him, people he didn't know. Some were historical figures, some were pagan gods and goddesses. But it was always as he was just waking up or just going to sleep. And he slept a lot. And he actually was physically ill. He had a chronic problem with his pancreas. He thought that he got pancreatitis from bad drugs back in 1970 or thereabouts. He said that his doctor would no longer fill his prescription. So he bought some pills from, well, Phil said he bought them from Nancy's brother Michael. It's safe to say that now there's a statute of limitation on that that's long since passed. Phil thought that his pancreatitis attack, his acute attack, was caused by bad drugs. But all his children have similar problems with chronic pancreatic dysfunction, pancreatitis. And in Phil's case, it flared up and nearly killed him. But it probably, maybe the drugs were a trigger, but it probably was not bad drugs. You know, cut with strychnine or film developer. It was probably just his chronic pancreatitis, and he continued to have problems that, in hindsight, I now know were symptoms of chronic pancreatitis. People thought he was just faking illness when he backed out of appointments and get-togethers. Even his shrink thought he was just making stuff up. he would say that he had the flu, intestinal flu, but he really did have something. And when Phil had me go in his place to the Nebula Awards, he did not fake being ill. He just said he was scared to go. Because Robert Heinlein had asked to meet him through the science fiction grapevine. And Phil was afraid that Heinlein didn't like him and was angry and like that. Well, it turns out Robert Heinlein had some copies of Phil's books and he wanted Phil to sign them for him. He was a fan. Let's see, Lucille Ball in 1974 was picking up radio signals through her dental fillings. Yes, it has been known to happen. Especially people with braces on their teeth can pick up radio signals with their dental work. So maybe it was coincidence that Phil suddenly picked up radio signals. What he heard the first time was our bedside radio. Yes, Wita, I also love that Robert Heinlein was a fan. I've been on for 2 hours now. Wow. It means I started this around 6:30. Huh. Jeez. Now, Phil rarely slept through the night, even before the oral surgery and all that went with that. He would sleep 2 or 3 hours and then get up and go to the typewriter. So it's quite possible that what he was experiencing was parasomnia. It's common in people whose rhythms, sleep schedules in particular, are messed up. You go into a dream state when you're awake. That doesn't explain the content. And this big, fat, heavy book, The Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, is only a fraction of the whole thing. But it's enough. And of course, at Zebrapedia, you can see all these images of his handwritten notes. And there are collections of his letters, which are priced way out of my range. Maybe I can find a used copy on eBay that doesn't cost a fortune. I don't know. Anyway, even now, you'll find people talking about the Black Iron Prison and saying the empire never ended. Well, that's pretty much true. Rome lost power. The hernia. Well, hang on. Rome lost power, but its cultural influence never really went away in Europe and England. and to some extent here in America, centuries later, 1,000 years later. And what have the most of the major wars been about? Empire. Um, Leaders who are not content to rule a nation, they want to rule the world. Let's see. Interesting too. Well, the hernia, it did not happen the way Phil told it. He made that up. No rushing to the emergency room. No child on the verge of death. No. Phil got up, walked out to the living room, and said, "Call Dr. Quack," we called him Dr. Quack, "and tell him that our son has an inguinal hernia." Now, Phil appeared to be in a trance, not fully awake, and then he walked back to the bedroom and lay down again. So I called the doctor and made an appointment, told them our son has an inguinal hernia, and sure enough, a few days later when we saw the doctor, he said, yeah, he has a hernia, and referred us to a specialist. So about a week later, we see the specialist, and he says, yeah, but this child is too young for the corrective surgery. Just don't let him cry, because if he gets all worked up, the hernia could get strangulated and it would be life-threatening. So for 4 months, we could not let that baby cry at all. And he was the fussiest little baby, maybe because he was in pain from the hernia. I don't know. But humph. It was amazing. And so anyway, when he did get the surgery, it seemed to fix everything. And we could let him cry. I was not getting any sleep. I'd be up all night walking the baby or sitting in the rocking chair with him to keep him from crying. And then all day long, I had my 43-year-old baby to deal with. I wasn't good at napping anyway. I didn't like naps. Long story. But, yeah, I can take a nap now. The problem is I'll sleep for 8 hours and then I'm up in the middle of the night. Oh, geez. Yeah, well, Phil made it more dramatic for his novels. And that's okay. He told a good story. But remember, it's a story. He based most of his novels and stories on things that he really experienced. So anyway, I got sick and tired of his constantly talking about these experiences because he was repetitive and I was a young mother with a young child trying to cook dinner or do the dishes, and Phil would insist that I drop everything and sit and listen to him for an hour. Drove me crazy. I'm trying to slot in the shoulder surgery. I know it was after March of 74. The question is, did he dislocate his shoulder before or after our son's hernia surgery? I'm not sure. But Phil started an argument about nothing, and I don't even remember the topic. But he picked up a little sea snail shell of mine and threw it against the wall. And I thought, that's weird. I heard the shell break before I saw it hit the wall. Well, what I heard was his shoulder coming out of the socket. And that must have been in 75. I had a learner's permit, but I didn't have a driver's license yet, and I had to drive him to the hospital. Yeah. So there he was lying in bed. When did we move to the house? Yeah, it had to be 74 when he dislocated his shoulder. In 75, we rented a house. Anyway, he was on Percodan, a very powerful analgesic, a pain pill after the shoulder surgery. And he was seeing all kinds of wild things, like Tony the Tiger coming out of a bright pink rectangle of light. Oh, he saw Tony the Tiger come and touch his shoulder with his paw before the shoulder thing, before his shoulder was dislocated. And it wasn't really Tony the Tiger, it was our cat Pinky as a cartoon like Tony the Tiger. I hope I have notes from years ago that'll help me place that in time. Okay, what was he most repetitive about? Oh, the goddess, I guess you could say, that he called Sophia, God's holy wisdom, and how he was trying to tie his experience in with his Christian religion. I'm about out of energy. I've been on for 2 hours and 13 minutes. And I've been up since about 3:30 in the morning because I took a nap yesterday and didn't wake up until then. Anyway, our cat Pinky died of cancer, and Phil was convinced that our cat had taken on the cancer that was supposed to kill him, Phil. Phil was convinced that some shadowy agency or other had targeted Phil with cancer, which reminds me of why am I blank on the name? The man who shot Lee Harvey Oswald claimed that the government was killing him by giving him cancer. You know, the nightclub owner shot Lee Harvey Oswald dead. And now that I have that book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, I can look into that cancer thread and pull on it and see a bit more. Yeah. Jack Ruby, thank you, Jason. Jacob Rubenstein, i.e. Jack Ruby. Yeah, and he did die of cancer, and he claimed that the government gave it to him. It was a very fast-acting cancer, too. Well, Phil thought that our cat Pinky had taken on the cancer that was meant for him. And I am not convinced that Phil's ultimate death was entirely natural. I can't prove it one way or the other, but it just seemed weird. Yeah, Dorothy Kilgallen, there's a YouTube video about her mysterious death. She was about to break wide open what really happened in the assassination of President Kennedy. And by the way, the anniversary of that is just a few days off from now. I was a child at the time, but the adults in my family did not like Kennedy. They voted for Nixon. That's who ran against Kennedy. But it's still horrifying to see the President of the United States shot dead. We thought Kennedy was a communist, but looking back, he was more conservative than most Republicans today. And he wanted to smash the CIA. I wish he had. He did fire the head of the CIA. There were many strange deaths in the 60s. Not just Jack Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but also Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Dorothy Kilgallen. And if you want to take it into the early 70s, there's also Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. No, long before the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Kennedy was simply running for office, he was a senator and he was president for the first term. Thought he was a communist. I don't know. I guess because he was a Catholic, and he did, in office, manage to contact Khrushchev directly and kind of tone down the rhetoric over the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs. But it was also experimental education. Our elementary school became an experimental school. The curriculum was changed, and we did get money for like improvements to the playground and stuff like that. $1960. Yeah, but anyway, it was still horrible. Except for Mom, who was delighted that somebody got him. I was shocked. And she was delighted. Do you know that I'm not sure about John Kennedy, but his brother Bobby was on one of those commissions during the McCarthy time. The McCarthy hearings on communism was just one of many different congressional panels that were investigating, or committees investigating all sorts of corruption, like the mafia, the Russians, I don't know. Well, they weren't Russians then, they were Soviets. Anyway, it was all confused, but if you look into the actual history, John Kennedy, once again, was more conservative than many Republicans today and more patriotic than most Democrats today. This is not a terrible country. If it's so terrible, why do thousands and thousands of people want to come here? We let in 1 million legal immigrants every year, and there are still people trying to cross the border and sneak in. So tell me, if that's so, how could this be such a terrible place to live if so many people will do anything to come here and live here and work here? It's ridiculous. Oh, and interestingly, the junior senator from Louisiana now is a Republican, but his name is John Kennedy. I've seen YouTube clips of him, and I like what he has to say. He doesn't equivocate. He doesn't, beat around the bush. He says what he means. He isn't mean about it. He uses, for the most part, ordinary language that any high school graduate can understand. Well, maybe not these days. Our education system is so messed up. Even back when I was a child, I learned more at home than I ever did at school. In fact, more often than not, our preparation for a test would be uh, here's the topic, go home and learn it. And it wouldn't be in our textbooks. Like one was, name all the US presidents in order. Or name the states on a blank map and write down their capitals. Well, I got Sacramento, California right. Interestingly, Portland is not the capital of Oregon, it's Salem. And Seattle is not the capital of Washington, it's Olympia. And New York City is not the capital of New York, it's Albany. I flunked both of those tests. I could place the first 6 presidents: Washington, Adams, gotta count, Madison, Monroe. Oh, I left out Jefferson. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and Quincy Adams. Now, back then they told us that John Quincy Adams was John Adams's nephew, but now they say he was his son. Well, the facts didn't change, but the books did. And who knows which was correct? I could place Lincoln, 16th president, and of course Kennedy, and at the time of the test, Lyndon Baines Johnson. I was kind of stuck after that. Oh, I knew Eisenhower. It came right before Kennedy. I would have had Roosevelt right, except I forgot about Truman. On the states, well, I could name Texas, and I actually knew that the capital was Austin from watching TV shows, old westerns. A lot of kids thought it was Houston. So anyway, I would have been held back a year in school, but Mom promised to teach me those things over summer vacation, and she did. Let's see. Witta knows some incurably corrupt underbelly of the government, but loves the country. How do you separate the two? Phil was convinced that Richard Nixon was pretty much the beast or the Antichrist. And it probably was Nixon's war on drugs that led to the ransacking of his house in 1971. But there was something more going on. Something to do with the occult. Ah, flashcards. I love flashcards, Jason. Well, Mom wouldn't let me do homework when I got home from school. It was always put down that book and go outside and play. But she didn't want me held back for a second go round of the fourth grade, so she just taught me. I still have some trouble placing the name of the state on a blank map, but I mean, I know California. I live here. Florida is obvious, and so is Texas. I'm getting better at it. I just mix up the Dakotas with Wyoming and Montana, and I mix up Illinois and the states surrounding Illinois. But I can do the West Coast and the East Coast and the southern border pretty well. Oh, yeah, Montana's governor. I've seen clips of her doing a good job. Well, I can place Oklahoma because the panhandle of Oklahoma is on top of Texas. Oh, Eli Whitney was the black guy who earned his freedom by inventing the cotton gin. Now the history books say he was white? Shit. Uh-huh. You're pushing the limit with foul language, but I'll leave it. It is bull crap. It's a load of bull. That 150 years of historians all and teachers all wrong. There are people who insist that Oswald acted alone and shot President Kennedy. Now, I don't know whether Oswald ever fired a shot, but the fact remains that he could not possibly have known that Kennedy's motorcade would turn onto that street where he would be below the window of the school book depository, because the parade route had been changed at the last minute. Originally, the motorcade would not have been on that street in Dealey Plaza. So either Oswald made a lucky guess, or he was informed that the motorcade would be rerouted to go past that window in the school book depository. Well, those are not the only two choices. The third possibility is someone else changed the motorcade route because they had snipers positioned to fire at the car when it was going through Dealey Plaza. In any case, whether Oswald fired a gun or not, He did not act alone. And I never saw such a stupid police force allowing Oswald to be shot by Jack Ruby. When you have a high-profile defendant, you can't really say criminal, he's innocent till proven guilty. You have a high-profile prisoner. You post officers in front of him and behind him. You don't leave him wide open to some nut with a gun. Unless it's been planned and you're in on the plan. Oh, yeah. It's true. The Indian schools ended up with many dead Indian children, Native Americans or First Nations. That in Canada, they're First Nations. Yeah. Just tossed them into common graves, unmarked. It's horrible. Oh, hi, V. I'm just about to sign off. It's been 2 hours and 35 minutes. And it's after 9 o'clock and I haven't eaten breakfast. It's okay, Jason. I usually write BS. I'm the YouTube algorithm is the only consideration in many cases, but sometimes I'm a little offended. But that one wasn't bad. Not that bad. But you can write BS, and we know what that means. Wow. I really wish I could get my DNA ancestry done. Can't spend the money right now. We know for a fact that we are the direct descendants of a black African slave. We're told that his wife was Cherokee, but we were not told that he was black. That was considered horrible when we were growing up. My brother found out when our cousins in Texas told him, yeah, he was black and we're black. Just happens that our branch of the family tree kept marrying white women. So, like, Grandpa was passing for white, but his dad couldn't pass. Oh, yeah, there were at least 2 Oswalds that day. And as I said last time I did a long one here, I think it was really an identity that different agents would take on, like the Bourne identity. Jason Bourne. It's not a real person, it's an identity. And different agents used the Oswald identity for different reasons. The main reason usually is so that Nobody knows who your family is if they want revenge, because they don't know who you are. Anyway, I gotta get off the computer now and get a bowl of cereal or something. Oh dear, the food bank gave me 1% milk. Oh well, I guess it'll do in a bowl of cereal. Ew. I like what they call whole milk, which is 4%, sometimes 3.5%. 1% is this. Oh well. Making frittatas, see? Good for you. My tummy won't manage fried food in the morning. Ordinarily, I wouldn't eat anything till noon, but my sleep schedule's off, so my food schedule is off, and I'm hungry. Thanks, Jan. Yeah, my back is a little better. I still have to really be careful about what I do and not lift anything that weighs more than 1 or 2 pounds. Maybe 5, but not often. Yeah, 1% is like hot dog water. Oh, I think I still have some half and half. That might go well on a bowl of cereal. I guess I could kick it up a notch and make oatmeal or malto meal or cream of wheat. Cream of wheat sounds good. Yeah, with brown sugar and half and half. I think I'll go for that. Okay, guys, it's been real, and I'm so glad you all came to my little parlor. Okay, come on, get the mouse in the box. I almost typed mouse. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day. Bye.